Good evening. It's 6:42, listeners and viewers, and it's time for the nation's business. I'm Siobhan Campbell.
And I'm Cliff Hughes.
So we're turning now to our reporting over the last week or so regarding the reports on Prime Minister Andrew Holness, those statutory declarations, which it is anticipated or expected at least will be tabled in the House of Representatives tomorrow. So Nationwide News understands that the Integrity Commission says following a 3-year probe which involved the hiring of an independent international forensic accounting examiner, it's unable to conclude that Prime Minister Andrew Holness illicitly enriched himself. The findings are reportedly contained in an approximately 170-page report, which is to be tabled in the House of Representatives on Tuesday. George Davis tells us more.
Sources close to the commission say its Director of Investigations, Kevin Stevenson, says he's unable to conclude that the Prime Minister illicitly enriched himself. This because he did not have access to a schedule of the Prime Minister's personal expenses over the relevant period or additional details concerning 3 of Mr. Holness's companies. Stevenson disclosed in his report that the Commission began an investigation into the Prime Minister's affairs after its commissioners said they were concerned about Holness's statutory declarations for 2021 and whether he owned more assets than his lawful earnings would facilitate. The Director of Investigations says the commissioners indicated that they were concerned about an unexplained increase in Holness's net worth to the tune of just under $4.5 million Jamaican dollars. But the Integrity Commission's Director of Investigations says following a review, the Investigations Department had no issue with the Prime Minister's declarations for 2021. Mr. Stevenson wrote that there was no unexplained growth in the Prime Minister's net worth in the year 2021. However, Mr. Stevenson says following the analysis, the Investigations Department took issue with what he described as an unexplained growth of just over 1.9 million Jamaican dollars in Mr. Holness's net worth for the year 2022. Stevenson noted that Holness's net worth had actually declined by just over 1.1 million Jamaican dollars between 2020 and 2021. During his report, Stevenson accused Holness of hindering his probe by not submitting a schedule of his personal expenses. But the Director of Investigations noted that the Prime Minister's lawyers insisted he had supplied all relevant information in compliance with the law. The Director of Investigations did not recommend prosecution for the Prime Minister concerning the offense of illicit enrichment. Kevin Stevenson revealed that the Commission hired an independent international forensic accounting examiner who reviewed Andrew Holness's financial affairs for 6 months because of the complexities in the Prime Minister's personal business arrangements. In another area of the investigation, Mr. Stevenson also expressed concern about the Prime Minister's investment in a bond. The Prime Minister's lawyers told the Commission that contrary to his written instructions, the bank which facilitated the investment made an error and attributed $30,000 from his Positive Jamaica Foundation to support the $60,000 bond purchase. The transaction was later reversed by the bank. However, the Director of Investigations at the Integrity Commission reportedly recommended that the Financial Investigations Division, FID, conducts an additional review of the bond purchase. The Integrity Commission has reportedly written to Parliament asking Parliament's support for the FID referral. Our news center disclosed last week that the Integrity Commission's Director of Investigations recommended that the Prime Minister be prosecuted for not disclosing 4 bank accounts, 3 of them owned by his parents and 1 owned by a former constituency office manager. That recommendation was rejected by the Director of Corruption Prosecutions at the Integrity Commission, Keisha Prince Kamika. The accounts had a combined total of just under 400,000 Jamaican dollars. Mrs. Prince Kamika said the prosecution would be hard-pressed to conclude that the Prime Minister knowingly did not declare the accounts on which he noted he was added as an emergency contact. In her ruling, Prince Kamika suggested that there was greater evidence to support Prime Minister Holness's explanation for not disclosing the bank accounts than there was to support a recommendation by Kevin Stevenson for the Prime Minister to be prosecuted. George Davis for Nationwide News.
George, that's the way to say Nationwide News. Well, so here we are now on the eve of having that report tabled in the Parliament tomorrow afternoon. And we're all looking forward to it with anticipation. Because this, certainly according to some, was the report that was going to sink Andrew Holness and his government. Based on our reporting, based on what we have established, there's no basis for that. And tomorrow it's going to be very, very interesting in the Parliament, because how this was promoted and projected and billed, this was supposed to be the smoking gun.
Precisely.
And it is anything but a smoking gun.
Well, you know, Mr. Hughes, the Parliament is politics is an interesting thing, and I can see already where there are threads, so to speak, that those in the opposition are now trying to cling to create a narrative around in order to continue to press this case that the Prime Minister has questions to answer to. And two avenues I see now. One is to suggesting that he did not truthfully state to the nation that he was under investigation for illicit enrichment. They believe that when he was asked that question and he suggested then that he was not aware of any parliamentarian being under investigation, he himself would have been aware that he was under investigation and that he
For
essentially...
illicit
Yes.
enrichment. And isn't there a procedure, a process leading up to that point when you are advised? That
Yes,
you are
as was
under-
explained.
Exactly. You're under investigation for illicit enrichment, as distinct from you are being requested to
Provide additional information.
Yes.
So, I think the only persons who would be able to say with absolute clarity that Mr. Holness knew one way or the other is himself and the Integrity Commission.
Of course.
I suspect until said report is tabled and we can prove otherwise, the Integrity Commission is not going to say that we had told Mr. Holness he was under investigation.
But and I don't want to jump the gun, but there are several issues that I'm sure will arise from the tabling of the report tomorrow. Several issues, several pieces of work to be done where the Integrity Commission is concerned and how it does its work. It is clear that it's in need of a fix.
And that is a good question, Mr. Hughes, because I've put it to myself and tried to contemplate at what point does a simple query rise to the level of an investigation, and at what point do you then take it before someone has to ask the question, is this malicious? Are you going on a fishing expedition in order to prove something, or are you just working with a theory that you then feel that there must be something else there and you have to press it and press it?
Right? And then there is the issue of the reporting of the Commission's work. Yes? This country has been subject for, 2.5, 3 years now?
3 years.
About this cloud hanging over the head of government, the Prime Minister, whether the Prime Minister was guilty of corruption, illicit enrichment. Yeah? And we have had it going up until now. Yeah? That can't be the way that we're going to proceed in the future.
But the same parliamentarians have created a rod for their own back, and they seem unable to accept that.
They will have to do some fixing. The Parliamentary Oversight Committee, yes? It will have to go to work on identifying specifically the issues and what are the remedies. Because this can't continue. We can't continue with this, where an opposition, gets whiff. That's another issue, altogether. who inside there is leaking to the PNP? Right now they think they're asking questions about who is leaking to Nationwide, but who is inside there leaking to the PNP? Yeah? To the point where the two leading members of the opposition could definitively assert that, listen, this is over. We're going to be having elections by December. Because when this report drops,
and when you look back now and put certain things into perspective with clarity, you remember when Dr. Campbell went on a political platform and said quite with vigor that Mr. Holness was under investigation for illicit enrichment and dared the Prime Minister to sue him.
Oh, yes, I didn't remember that. Yes, he said that. Yes, and dared Holness. Yes. Will that suit come now? Will it come now? But part of the thing, is that, and this is something that we here at Nationwide have had to be grappling with. Yeah? And that is, we were, like the rest of the country, were told 2 Thursdays ago that this report had been submitted to the Parliament.
Yes.
2 Thursdays ago. And the Parliament was in recess and wouldn't return until tomorrow. We knew that this was the hottest political issue bedeviling the country for 3 years. And yet we were being told that we should hunt down the report to find out what it says. And when we finally hunt it down, we were told that, no, you should not be reporting it. Yeah? And the commission, the Integrity Commission, went as far as to issue a public release reminding us and others.
I found that so peculiar.
Why peculiar?
Because I'm certain today that that's not the first time a document was leaked from the Integrity Commission.
Very well. Very well. The Gleaner has had several leaks to it. True or false?
True.
Several Integrity Commission leaks. Was it ever told or asked or urged, listen?
Not at all.
Don't?
Not at all.
But we were, and we know that release was meant for us. We were told. Yes?
It was quite obvious.
We were being reminded. Yeah, that listen, you should not be reporting on this until it's tabled in the Parliament. But others, as my good friend reminds me, Siobhan, yeah, got leaks. What were we supposed to do? This could potentially have been the biggest story of the...
And what news agency would have just sat on that?
Precisely.
What would be the expectation from the Jamaican public that a news entity would have received such information and simply sat on it?
Yeah. What would we be guilty of then?
Malpractice. Poor journalists.
Yes. Yes. One way or the other. But we apparently there's one set of rule for others and one set of rule for Nationwide. Yeah? When it doesn't fit the narrative for some interest, then we must be judged differently. Well, no. No, that ain't going to happen. And tomorrow, the debate will intensify over what is contained in the report. Yeah? And how do we proceed as a country? Because surely, as I've said over and over, Jamaica needs a working, viable, credible Integrity Commission. We need it.
And there are two things there, Mr. Hughes, because I recall this matter of the Integrity Commission in its current form had started with the People's National Party under administration, under Mark Golding as Justice Minister, as in the guardrails that were needed. Yes. And I recall even from day one, there were concerns raised about the gag clause, raised about how the Integrity Commission was to handle reports. And the People's National Party shouted those down, saying, no, this is necessary. We've had long-running issues with the Contractor General and how they've handled matters. This is necessary to protect the reputations and lives of politicians who are often maligned and unfairly attacked based on frivolous information just frittered out by the Contractor General.
And it's a different tune being sung now by the opposition, and that is due to what? You're in
Political expediency.
Absolutely. You're in opposition now, so it suits you. Yeah? And that is why we have to guard against the excesses of those out of power and in power.
Yes.
Yeah?
And then this brings up another interesting point. When that request now comes to the Parliament to call on the FID to further push that investigation, would it be fair for the parliamentarians to okay that, essentially suggesting that they use, because remember the FID is not a standalone entity, it's
I
a
think
part
you should step back a little for the purposes of our listeners. What is it that the FID is being asked
the share
to do?
purchase made by Mr. Holness.
No, but they are not. We gather that the Integrity Commission is asking the Parliament, yes, to approve, to give it, yes, its blessings, its authority, yes, to refer, yes, the matter to the FID, the Financial Investigations Division, for it to go further, yeah? And we expect that to be an issue. The question, though, is, do you want to give that power to the politicians for them to use their majority today
Yes.
to say, okay, we're going after John on the other side, yeah? And when it flip, what do you do? Yeah? And I'm saying the politicians are playing fast and loose. Do you really want to give that authority to the Parliament, as in to the majority party?
So essentially, go after your political rivals.
Yeah. Do you want to go down that road? I don't think so. I don't think so. Well, all of this started last Monday, you know, when our first reporting on the investigation report, when Nationwide reported that 384,000 Jamaican dollars in 4 accounts, which the Integrity Commission flagged, were at the center of the issue concerning the non-certification of Prime Minister Holness' statutory declarations for 3 years. We reported that the Commission's Director of Corruption Prosecution, Keisha Prince Kamika, rejected a recommendation from the Director of Investigations, Kevin Stevenson, that the Prime Minister be charged for failing to declare the sums in those bank accounts.
Those accounts reportedly belonged to his parents and a former constituency office manager. High-level sources close to the commission say Mrs. Prince Kamika ruled that a viable case could not be mounted. This, as evidence to support the PM's explanation of mission, is greater than a suggestion by the investigators that he might have intentionally failed to declare the sums. More, again, from Mr. Davis.
Our sources close to the commission say on August 30 this year, its Director of Investigations, Kevin Stevenson, recommended that consideration be given to charging the Prime Minister for the monies located in 4 accounts at Scotiabank belonging to his father, mother, and a former constituency office manager. 2 of the accounts belong to his mother. 1 belongs to his father, and the other to the former constituency office manager. At the time of the probe by the Integrity Commission, the first account for his mother held a balance of approximately 300,000 Jamaican dollars. The second account for his mother had a balance of 67,000 Jamaican dollars. His father's account had 11,000 Jamaican dollars, while his constituency office manager's account had $823. In total, the 4 accounts red flagged by the Commission held a balance of $384,130. That's Jamaican dollars. The Prime Minister told the Commission he had no personal knowledge of the funds in the 4 accounts. He told the Commission that his name was added to the bank accounts as an emergency contact and he had no direct interaction or knowledge of monies in the accounts. The Director of Investigation recommended that Holness be charged by way of omission for making a false declaration to the Commission. But a few days later, on September 2 this year, the Director of Corruption Prosecution, Keisha Prince Kamika, said no. She ruled that the Director of Investigations had not presented a strong enough case to support his recommendation for the Prime Minister to be charged. Prince Kamika says while Holness had a duty to declare the sums, there was not enough evidence to support a criminal charge for intentionally omitting to do so. Prince Kamika wrote, quote, "In light of the foregoing, there is insufficient evidence on file to establish that the Honourable Prime Minister, by way of omission, made a false statement in his statutory declarations for the period ending December 31, 2021, as it relates to the BNS savings accounts. Accordingly, no charges are to be laid." End quote. Our sources say the Director of Corruption Prosecution supported her finding with case law. Prince Kamika said the Prime Minister's explanation for the omission appeared greater than any suggestion he intentionally did not include monies in the 4 accounts in his 2021 statutory declarations. Prince Kamika reportedly wrote, quote, "In accordance with the principles outlined in Regina versus Jones and Wicker, therefore the prosecution would again be challenged to establish that the omission was intentional, as required for the knowingly element of the offense, in the face of even greater support for the explanation which has been provided." End quote. Prince Kamika wrote that additionally, no evidence had been presented to contradict the Prime Minister's explanation in his response to the Commission or to suggest use of the accounts beyond the stated purpose. Our sources say the Integrity Commission's Director of Investigations had also raised concern with the Prime Minister's purchase of shares from a financial institution. However, no adverse recommendation or referral was made concerning that purchase, which the Prime Minister insists was above board. Nationwide sources say the Integrity Commission revealed in its report that prior to its recommendation concerning monies in the 4 accounts, it had hired an international forensics investigator to review the Prime Minister's financial affairs. We are told that the foreign-based investigator worked on those matters for about 6 months. It's understood the investigator reported to the Commission that he had found nothing untoward or illegal in the Prime Minister's financial affairs. The Prime Minister's 2021 declarations have so far not been certified by the Commission. It's believed that the Commission's probe into the 4 accounts stood in the way of the certification. George Davis for Nationwide News.
So, there you have it. You have been brought fully up to speed.